Amend the Mass Media Group is California Capital's premier YouTube channel focused on reparations, dedicated to political advocacy and apologetically aimed at shining a spotlight on our righteous justice claim for reparations.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.
Hi, my name is Dr. Critical R. Truth Bay. I am a housing navigator in LA County. We have a nonprofit, the Kingdom Warriors Foundation, that started in 2013, housing outreach and engagement. Our main purpose is to build housing. For the last 8 years, we had submitted proposals to LAHSA, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, as well as LA County District 2, Mark Ridley Thomas at the time, and currently LA City, as well as the BSCC grant with Reginald Jones Sawyer, Board and State Correctional Program for youth. And not one grant through these entities did we accept except for one. We had $1.7 million that was given specifically to build housing in 2019. And we were told by Chase Bank that because we're not Hispanic contractors, that we are not allowed to have access to our own money that we worked for. And therefore Chase Bank, Mark Ridley Thomas and his other friends decided to take it and give it to USC as one of the many contracts that they wanted to do for their own purposes. And so these are the type of things that we want as accountability. I'm also going to briefly streamline Karen Bass's mayoral election as well, is also connected to USC. So what we are as, and I'm speaking specifically on behalf of Black Americans, families, descendants of slaves. We have a distinct history. We built this country, yet we are the same ones that received no equity. If we are an immigrant of any country, they receive reparations and rights first and foremost than Americans, Africans born on American soil. So I want to send a clear message today. This is the 10th. I don't know if it will be the last, but it's the 10th meeting of the California Reparations Committee Task Force and CJEC that did a great job on ushering AB 33121 and SB 189, Section 14. These are things that we must see to fruition. Everybody got their reparations, including the slave masters that originally enslaved us in the 1800s. They received their reparations because the government felt bad that they were losing property, which was us, which were my ancestors, that they gave each master maybe a $500 to $1,000 each per slave that they lost. So we're here today because we are discussing the need or how to distribute the reparations. There's no need to discuss it. We are reaching a point where, as persons of African descent born on American soil, that the Constitution, the way it's written right now, actually gives permission for us to be incarcerated at will. As Dred Scott in 1857, he was told by Roger Taney that you have no rights that a white man will ever respect. And actually that became law because Roger Taney was the chief Supreme Court justice who was also a slave owner. But nobody held him accountable. Nobody disagreed with what he said. And to this day, on paper, as a black woman that has a nonprofit, I am told that I don't have the same rights as other races do in order to build housing. And that has to stop. So what's the amount? Let's start with $1 million. Those who have on record, especially organizations who have written and applied for grants for programs for housing, incarceration, community services, that they should be in the front line, especially if you're a foundational Black American. If you're FBA, you should be in the front line to receive all of the grants that you were denied. That should be the first and foremost. Then we can work with others who have not applied, and then for children in schools and communities that are filled with foundational Black Americans. There's a way that we can have accountability and have the right people receive it. But reparations, I want to be very clear. It is specifically a payment of a wrongdoing of a specific historical event, and that's chattel slavery. Anything mixed with that, anything that's delaying that, anything that's denying that is an injustice, and we ask that to stop. So I stand here today at the California Science Center listening and meeting a lot of great community activists who are speaking truth to power. And what we want specifically, what I would like to see is especially Bank of America, which Thomas Monahan, he stated that he has grants specifically for Black African American organizations. We've heard this before. We don't see it. Bank of America has cut out a lot of loans to Black families, redlining, they were a big part of it. Chase Bank is no different. As a matter of fact, Chase Bank owned chattel slaves. So we can't expect these banks to give reparations or be part of reparations as they say. We got to actually take it. And how do we take it? By being consistent. You need to attend your city hall, and this is a message specifically to my Black family. I need you to attend local politics. You must be involved in local politics by any means necessary. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Huey P. Newton, Marcus Garvey, many of our ancestors that died for the simple rights for us to be equal. We cannot allow that in vain. We must continue the legacy. So what do we do in 2022? We have to obtain land. And so what we're trying to do is to acquire land, especially if you have land in your area that has been abandoned for over 5 to 10 years. Automatically it should be given to foundational Black Americans as part of reparations. We have a blueprint to build acute care centers. We have a blueprint to actually build housing, but we cannot continue to be blocked by our Congressional Black Caucus by our black-faced politicians that say that, oh, we're here, we represent you, but no, when it comes to Black American issues, that you curse us out, that you tell us why you were complaining, to leave, to forget about it, it's in the past, and that's not fair. You don't do that to the Asian reparation bill. You never did that to the LGBTQ community. It only goes to Black Americans. So we say this, we're not going to be repetitive, that we have plans of action, we have people mobilizing, we have groups coming together as we speak, and we must continue to come together until reparations are actually paid. So, yes.
So I just really want to touch on the B of A situation right now, because it's they're giving specifically, supposedly, a program right here in Los Angeles, supposedly, Black Americans and Latinos, specifically to those groups here in Los Angeles. Can you elaborate and speak on that and clarify any?
Absolutely. So the Kingdom Warriors Foundation is one of the many Black-ran organizations that are applied for the equity that Bank of America has put out. They have put out $10,000 startup costs, $100,000, especially for Black businesses. This is something this is not the first time they put it out. This is probably the third installment of what Brian Thomas Moynihan, mind you, Brian Thomas Moynihan, who is the CEO of Bank of America, is also the board of directors for the California African American Museum. For the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. He's part of the board. He's the same one that puts on display some of my ancestors year after year, but yet when it comes to equity, we still have yet to see it. I am one of many Black organizations that are still waiting to see the funding that we applied for when it comes to small businesses and home equity. Those are the two things that not only Bank of America, but Chase Bank has to give and actually complete. So they put it out last month, August, and now they say it's going to take about another 60 days for them to determine the first round of organizations that will benefit from this first round equity. And so this is what we are holding to the fire, Brian Thomas Moynihan, that we have a direct message for you. If you give us another runaround, if we have to apply and submit more paperwork, if you're saying that things are missing when we turn in these applications, then what is the point of even continuing that rhetoric? So this time around, we're going to hopefully see that the organizations that applied for it, the African American groups that applied for it, actually get the equity that they applied for. So we have to see.
Be on top of it.
Yes.
Keep us up to date and on the report. So where can people reach you?
Yes. So we've focused particularly on housing navigation. So we partner up with many groups specifically for housing and homeless outreach in LA, which is number one. There's about 10 million people in LA County and about 4 million in LA City. And 1/3 of the population is homeless. And that has increased because there's an organization called LAHSA, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. This organization started in 1994 between the city of LA and the county of LA. They were blaming each other for the homeless crisis. So when they came up with this joint powers authority, that actually gave this organization state funding, county funding, city funding, and federal funding to the tune of at least $1 billion every year. That does not include private funding. And what they do, they have about a 750 member team that's supposed to solve homelessness. They fund homeless organizations, they fund homeless shelters. So anything that has to do with homelessness, LAHSA, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, is responsible for that. The only problem is, again, homeless providers that are Black-ran are not getting the grants, the contracts, the capacity building, the RFPs that they submit. They're not getting the funding. As a matter of fact, they're being discriminated against. So we had to submit a complaint to HUD. Marsha Fudge is well aware of LAHSA and the discriminatory practices. So what is being done about it? We have yet to see. So what my job as a housing navigator is to have accountability. Accountability is the key. And what we are planning on doing in the next 15 days is to have the grant process applied. So we're going to keep you in tune. We'll let you know whether or not LAHSA had went through the contracting process with Black organizations the same way they have with other organizations. And stay tuned. So I want you to log on to onepercentage.org. OnePercentage.org is our marketing tool for us to receive 1% of resources, time, and income for us to collectively reduce homelessness, incarceration, and violence. And this is something that is collectively plaguing the black community. We don't want other organizations, black organizations, to continue to cut each other off. We must work together by any means necessary. And if you know that you're not going to work together with your fellow brother and sister, step out the way. Step out the way, because you're blocking progress for us that are really moving and shaking. And so I actually wanted to introduce another brother here.
My name is James Marks.
So what are you doing here, brother?
I'm here at the California Reparations Task Force.
All right, so why did you come to the reparations task force? How did you hear about it?
Oh man, I heard about it through several individuals called me, media outlets, and I'm near and dear to this right here. A partner of mine named Cam, who's worked on the Reparations Task Force with a group called Cobra in Chicago, which they have gotten, I think it's Evansville, Chicago, and they've gotten Illinois, I apologize, they've gotten reparations in that town right there. So he's been helping me, assisting me with what I need to do out here, how I can stay engaged, how I can engage the community, and how we can move this needle forward.
He's very knowledgeable in the housing process for blacks here in LA. How is that going? Discrimination?
Oh, discrimination is rampant. It's at an all-time high. I worked inside the Los Angeles, as she spoke of, County Homeless and Housing, and I worked in tandem with LASA and other organizations. And what I found out was, when you look at the statistics, because the numbers do not lie, we're the minority of the minorities in this city. I believe we're 11 to 13% in between that bracket right there, and that is also nationally. But when it comes to homelessness, we're also in the 40 percentile.
Actually, 59%.
Oh, we see.
Homeless is black families.
Yes.
Black families, and so this is why, if we, as our brother mentioned, 11% of the population, but yet we're overrepresented in incarceration, in housing discrepancies, and everything else. And that's why we're here, and that's why reparations is so important.
And you have to ask yourself the reason why. With me, I was fortunate enough to sit in those offices, and I was the only black individual in those offices. And what I experienced personally, I have two experiences: one working in mental health for the last 6 years, and working for the housing department. And the first of all, working in the housing department, what I discovered is that when a black individual or a black family comes into that office, they're going to send them to a shelter for 90 days to 6 months. How do I know? Because I'm in those same streets that they come from. So I may see that individual, that family down the line. Hey, what happened? Hey, well, they sent me to a shelter and they kicked me out 6 months. Hold on. I'm like, they didn't give you no rapid housing. They didn't give you no subsidies. They didn't even connect you to a voucher program.
March 25th, there was emergency housing voucher program. This was specifically for homeless individuals from Section 8 housing authorities. And HUD has given 70,000 vouchers nationwide. About 5,000 came to LA County. Problem is, it was divided into an organization called LASA that also disproportionately rejected black clients from receiving their vouchers, and then gave these vouchers to other families. Can you touch up on that?
Yes, like she said, they rejected black providers from being able to provide these services to us in our community. And what I discovered was, me being the only black in that office, and as I stated earlier, they would give the blacks, send them to shelters for 90 days to 6 months. With no services, no supportive services, no linkage or connection to anything whatsoever other than go back to where you came from. And all of the other races, not only did they give them quality customer service and caring service, but they also, because what I did was this, I would tell a black person, okay, you came in here with that Hispanic person, get their number, follow them, find out what happened with them. And they would contact, and I would stay in touch with them during this 6 month period. And I ran a beta test for over a year. And so 80% of the blacks, they were kicked right back in the streets. And 95% of the Hispanics and every other race, they received either streets to subsidy vouchers, which mean you're only paying 30% of your rent for 5 years, and they extend it for 2 years, or else they got vouchers, or they got other kind of subsidy programs. But they didn't give any, and I discovered that that's an administration problem, because as my sister said, all of the money is going into administration and their cronies and their subcontractors who don't look like us. So in return, that's why we're in the position that we're in, because they don't have any of us sitting in the decision-making process while they're making those decisions, and we got to get that out the way, and we got to get people like her organization and others that are empowered. We have to empower them even more.
That's right. Absolutely, and USC has a big part of that too, because most of the social work case managers graduate from there. That's why there's a lot of contract fraud with USC. That's why they're getting indicted. So we have to be accountable. We have to be proactive in these city council meetings. That's why I encourage my black families, attend the city council meetings. Very important.
Yes.
Yes.
You explained about, what's her name?
Karen Bass.
No, not Karen Bass. The other woman
Maxine Waters? Yes.
Explain about that situation.
Yeah, so she came to Vermont and Imperial, and hundreds of families was waiting for a voucher, and I was trying to speak to her on the side so I could explain to her what was happening. She made a beeline and tried to avoid me. I worked under her as a volunteer for years, and yet I know personally that she doesn't do nothing for the black community, at least for black families. And eventually she told all of the families, and this video went viral, to go home.
My niece was there.
Yeah, so LA Times was going to cover this story. She threatened LA Times reporter not to cover this story. That video that went viral, I was the one that I shot the video. So my name is Dr. Truth Bay, and I specifically told Maxine Waters and try to meet with her so she can have the financial committee money and also Black Congressional Caucus to house black families. But again, when it comes to black American issues, they don't want to hear it. And so Maxine Waters, along with Karen Bass, they're both of our Congress people in this area. We have yet to see a yes from them. Now that the mayor election is coming, we want Karen Bass to stay in her congressional seat and work with Rick Caruso as mayor, because he's a businessman. We need a businessman who wants to support us on our side. We don't want poverty pimpers. We don't want people doing undercover deals. We want equity, and there's plenty of it out here, but we need to stop with the bureaucracy and the redlining. So that's why the Kingdom Warriors Foundation, nonprofit organization, Black FBA ran, that supports all people, but we must get the equity to help house our people, to get our brothers out of incarceration, to educate our black families, and have equity just like everybody else.
And make no mistake about it, the reason that we're in this dire strait that we're in as a black community is because of the misleadership who's been on the guard and at helm for the last 25 to 30 years, and Karen Bass is a part of that.
That's right. And so if you want to reach out, it's 323-884-8583 is our telephone, onepercentage.org. We are housing navigators, and we're looking to partner up with those who want land acquisition. That's the key. All these empty properties that are born and raised are empty in our neighborhood. We're going to take it back, build housing, acute care centers, resource centers, and we're not going to ask our politicians. We're going to have them work for us as they should have since day one. That's what it's all about. Power to the people.